Now we will start talking about muscle tissue and how skeletal muscles function to move bone. We will also start working to learn a few select muscles. These will be the same muscles you're required to learn for the laboratory portion of this course. It is important that you start early. I recommend that you make flashcards for each muscle that includes the muscle name, origin, insertion, and action. Create these cards now and review them daily. Let's get started by looking at the basic functions of the muscular system. The first one is skeletal muscles produce skeletal movements. Muscle contractions pull on tendons and move bones of the skeleton. Skeletal muscles help to maintain body posture and position. The tension in skeletal muscles helps to maintain an upright body position. Even as you're sitting in your chair watching this recording, there are muscles that are contracting in your back to keep you upright, and muscles contracting in your legs to keep your legs bent. Skeletal muscles support our soft internal organs and guard entrances and exits to the body. For example, the entry and exit points of the digestive system contain skeletal muscles that permit things to enter and exit. Skeletal muscle contraction helps to maintain the body temperature, such as shivering when you are cold. The heat from contracting muscles will help to warm you. And lastly, muscle tissue stores nutrients. While muscle tissue contains a lot of protein, using this protein to fuel the body is not necessarily desirable. Dieting to lose weight can deplete protein in muscle tissue if not done correctly. When dieting, weight loss should be slow, and exercise should be part of the plan to burn fat while protecting your lean muscle mass. There are 3 types of muscle tissue found in the body: cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscle. Cardiac muscles make up the heart. The muscle cells of the heart are small, branched, contain a single nucleus, and are connected by specialized structures called intercalated discs. Striations or stripes are present in these cells, which are created based on the organization of contractile proteins within the muscle cell. Cardiac muscle is an involuntary muscle, which means it is controlled automatically. Skeletal muscles are quite long and cylindrical. A single muscle cell is as long as the muscle it makes up. For example, the sartorius muscle, which extends from your hip bone to the medial aspect of your knee, is the longest muscle in your body and contains the longest muscle cells. Skeletal muscle cells are multinucleated because they are such large cells. They need to have multiple nuclei to have areas where genes can be expressed and new proteins can be produced, allowing the muscle cells to be easily repaired if damaged. Striations are present in the skeletal muscle, and this muscle is considered voluntary, which means you have control over them. The last type of smooth muscle is found lining blood vessels and various organs of the digestive, urinary, and reproductive tracts. These cells look quite different and are short and spindle-shaped. They contain a single nucleus and are not striated. They, of course, contain contractile proteins, but they are not organized in the same way as they are in cardiac and skeletal muscle, which is why we don't see stripes. Smooth muscle is involuntary muscle, and you don't have control over this type of muscle. Skeletal muscles are arranged in bundles called fascicles. The organization of these fascicles creates patterns of arrangement that affect the function of the muscle. First is a parallel arrangement of muscle fascicles. In this case, the fascicles are parallel to the long axis of the muscle. If you look at the muscle tissue itself, you'll notice these parallel bundles of muscle fibers. Most muscles in the body are of this type. The biceps brachii is an excellent example of a parallel muscle. Contraction of this type of muscle causes it to shorten while the diameter gets larger. A convergent arrangement of fascicles extends over a broad area and converges on a single attachment site. The pectoralis major is an excellent example of a convergent muscle. These muscles are very versatile since contraction of different portions of the muscle can change the direction of pull. Next up are circular muscles. Here the fascicles are arranged in concentric rings. Orbicularis oris is an excellent example of a circular muscle. When this muscle contracts, it causes the diameter of the opening to decrease. Pennate is the fourth and final arrangement of fascicles. In these muscles, the fascicles form a common angle with the tendon. There are 3 different types of pennate muscles. In a unipennate muscle, all fascicles are on the same side of the tendon. Semimembranosus is an excellent example of a unipennate muscle. The second type is the bipennate muscle. In this case, there are fascicles on either side of the tendon. Rectus femoris is an excellent example of a bipennate muscle. Rectus femoris is one of your quadricep muscles. The third type is the multipennate muscle. In this muscle, the tendon branches and fascicles are oriented on both sides of the tendon. The deltoid muscle, which makes up the cap of your shoulder, is an excellent example of a multi-pinnate muscle. When these muscles contract, they cannot move a tendon as far as a parallel muscle, but can produce more tension because they generally have more muscle fibers, which means they can generate a greater force. There are 3 key principles that determine how a muscle produces movement. The first is muscles always pull on bones. Muscles never push on a bone. Each muscle has an origin and insertion. The origin is the fixed end and attaches to the bone, cartilage, or connective tissue. The insertion of the muscle is the site that moves. When a muscle contracts, the insertion moves toward the origin. Secondly, muscles operate as part of a lever system. A lever is a rigid structure that moves on a fixed point called the fulcrum. A lever moves when the applied force is sufficient to overcome the resistance or the load. When we consider the structures involved, the bone serves as the lever, the fulcrum is the joint, and the applied force is the muscle. The load is the weight of the object the muscle is trying to move. The load could be an object held in the hand, the bone itself, or even your entire body. There are 3 different classes of levers. The first type of lever is a first-class lever. In a first-class lever, the fulcrum lies between the load and the applied force. A common first-class lever is a pair of scissors. In this case, the fulcrum represents the piece that holds the blades together. The applied force is where you put your hand, and the load is whatever you're trying to cut. In the body, the trapezius extending the head is an example of a first-class lever. The applied force is the contracting muscle. The fulcrum is the joint between C1 and the occipital condyles of the skull, and the load is the face. A second-class lever is when the load is located between the fulcrum and the applied force. A common second-class lever is a wheelbarrow. In this case, the fulcrum is where the wheel is attached to the axle, the load is whatever is in the barrow, and the applied force is when the handles are lifted. In the body, an example of a second-class lever is plantar flexion when standing up. So standing on your toes. In this case, the applied force is the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles on the back of the leg, the load is your entire body, and the fulcrum is the joint between the metatarsal and the phalange. While a second-class lever can move a lot, they do so very slowly and not very far, so these are the least common class of levers found in the body. The most common class is the third-class lever, and in this case, the applied force lies between the fulcrum and the load. A common example is a pair of tweezers or forceps. The fulcrum is at the end, the applied force in the middle, and the load is what you're trying to pick up with the tweezers. Biceps brachii is a great example of a third-class lever. The fulcrum is the elbow joint. The applied force is the biceps brachii, and the load is whatever you're trying to move. As you study the muscles, try to think about what class of lever they fall into. The last principle is that muscles work in groups rather than individually. An agonist is the prime mover. This is the muscle whose contraction is chiefly responsible for producing a particular movement. The antagonist is a muscle whose action opposes that of a particular agonist, and a synergist helps a larger agonist work more efficiently. A synergist may provide additional pull, or it may help to stabilize the origin. An example of an agonist is brachialis as the prime mover to flex your forearm. The triceps brachii is the antagonist to that muscle because it extends the forearm. An example of a synergist is teres major, which helps latissimus dorsi do its job. Let's talk a little bit about how muscles are named. Understanding how a muscle is named can help you learn the action, location, or description of the muscle. Knowing these things will make learning muscles easier. Muscles can be named based on the direction of the muscle fibers, such as oblique or rectus. Oblique means the fascicles run at an angle, and rectus means the fibers are straight up and down. Muscles can also be named based on locations, such as abdominis for the abdominal region, brachialis for the upper arm, and femoris for the femur. Muscles named by position include lateralis for the lateral side of the body, or externus toward the outside of the body. Muscles named based on their shape include deltoid for triangle, orbicularis for circle, and trapezius for trapezoid. Muscles named based on size include magnus for big and longus for long. Muscles named based on their origin and insertions include sternocleidomastoid, whose insertion is on the mastoid process and origins are on the sternum and clavicle, which also means cleido. Muscles named based on the number of origins include biceps brachii with 2 origins and triceps brachii with 3 origins. Lastly, muscles can be named based on their action, such as abductor or adductor. In many cases, muscles are named based on a combination of characteristics such as biceps femoris. This muscle has 2 heads and is located near the femur. As you work to learn the muscle names, think about how that name is derived. Is it based on location, size, movement, shape, number of origins, position, direction of the muscle fibers, or a combination? Thinking about this will help you remember key aspects of a particular muscle.